This is our Maze C++ tutorial for Godot. We last left off with a Godot project where we had our stickman in a box with an exit square. It's running, but we aren't going to do much with Godot in this video. We are going to start our C++ coding and use Visual Studio. So launch Visual Studio, create a new project, and pick where to put it. You should put it outside of Godot unless you want to go through the ignore files process. Otherwise, it will take a long time whenever you recompile. And then our name, I'm just going to put Maze CPP. You can make it whatever you'd like. And we have our project. We will add some source files. We need a player, which is going to be a class, and then we need a root, is what I'm going to be calling the main. I'm purposely having a different name so that you can see how to have a different name. And then Godot library will be our library that is the DLL. It is not a class, the others are classes. And then we need a header for each of our classes, so root and player. And then we have our initial setup here. I'm just going to rearrange a couple things to have the headers next to the C++ files. And then I am going to do our normal if-endef guard, and then we will include some Godot files, and we are going to want for Godot. We are not getting our autocomplete because I did not set up the project yet. We're gonna change the build to x64 just so I don't forget, and then we're gonna go to project properties, make sure we are on all configurations and all platforms. We are going to pick our output directory, and we are going to pick the Godot project main folder. We are going to make a target name, lib project name, - platform, - configuration. And then we want a DLL. And we want our Visual C++ directories. We need our include directories. So add wherever you have your Godot C++ bindings, the headers master folder, and then the same place, the C++ master folder, the include folder. And then that's all we need for the include directories. For library directory, we need to add the bin folder of our C++ bindings. That is cpp master bin. And then we need linker. We need linker to use the C++ bindings library. We are going to import it as lib. Lib Godot CPP Windows, and then platform .configuration .lib. And this is probably not what we had it named as output because we used the existing sconstruct file. So let's make sure that our file is named correctly. change it to match what we are going to be importing in Visual Studio. And x64 instead of 132 if you're 64-bit. Okay, now we should have autocomplete. Let's just type it in again to see that it shows up. And there we go. You see that it is auto-completing everything now. So let's punch in a couple Godot includes here. We need core Godot, of course. We need node 2D. That is the type of node that we will be on root. And root is going to be importing a bunch of stuff. So we need input because we're going to do some input stuff. We need input event because that's an intermediate step. Input event action. And then input event mouse button. And that is what we're actually going to be going for, is the mouse button, but I'm including the others, which I think would probably be included by input event mouse button anyway. We're also going to include global constants, and then for our project includes, root is going to include all of our other classes, which at this time is just player. And I'm going to include stdio.h just so that I can printf stuff if I need to. And that's all we need for includes, I believe. So let's make our library so that we can actually use this in Godot. We need to pound include all of our C++ files so that we can register them with Godot so that Godot knows where they are. We are also including GD native API struct. I'm not 100% sure that's needed, but I've needed it before for some other stuff. So if you dive much further, you're probably going to need to reference it. And then the documentation says do not use namespace Godot here. So we are going to not use namespace Godot. We need a Godot GD native init. And it is doing nothing but calling the native. And then we're going to do the same thing for terminate. And we're just calling the native one again. Not doing too much sophisticated with this one. Now we are going to include our native script in it, which we register our classes in here. We're going to pass along the call to the Godot native one, and at the moment we don't have classes to include quite yet. Now let's make an actual root object. We're going to work in namespace Godot. We need to reference our player class, and this is a root class of type Godot script node 2D. And then we want to use the macro Godot class for the name of our class, which is root. And let's make a public static node 2D pointer for our inner wall container node. And we're going to make a player star so that we can point to our player object. And then we need a static void register methods, which is going to pass along what functions we need Godot to know about. And then we need a constructor and destructor, and we're going to handle input events in a function called handle input event. Well, this is going to be _input for GDScript, but we're going to have it a different name so that you see how to use a different name. And then we're also going to process the mouse wheel. So we need to include root.h. And we are going to be using Godot namespace again. And then we want to define our statics. So we have a pointer to our player and a pointer to the inner wall container node. Then let's do our register methods function right up at the top so that we can always find it to add things later if we need to add things later. We're going to register method _input, and we're going to map that to our handle input event function. And then we are going to do our constructor quick and our destructor. And then we're going to handle input event, take in the Godot variant, and we will cast it to an object. And we will also cast it to an input event. We aren't going to be doing a lot of error checking because it would just make this video a lot longer. But obviously your actual code will have that type of stuff. I'm going to make a Godot string with the string input event mouse button. We want it to be able to detect when that occurs. So we are also going to take the Godot string result of get class from our input event. And then if the two of them are the same, then we know that we have a mouse button event input. And so then we will process our mouse wheel. We know that at this point that it's a mouse button, so we're casting it to a mouse button for our process M wheel. And then in process M wheel, we're taking in our mouse button event, and we are going to wind up with an int64t being returned from our get button index call. And then if our button event is pressed, this is the button being pressed, then we will check if the button index is the right one, which is global constants button wheel down. And then, so if we have someone pressing our mouse wheel down, we want to zoom properly. And then also if button mouse wheel up, we want to zoom the other way. I'll figure out which one is in and out later. And it still builds, which is good. Now let's go to player header and start out our player coding. If guard it and include root.h. And then include kinematic body 2D because that is our node type. Include a camera 2D because we have one on our player. And then we're inside namespace Godot. Our class name is player, and we are of type Godot script. Kinematic body 2D. And then we want our macro again, Godot class, and the name of our class player. And then we want a vector2 for private. We're going to just call it motion. And then we want a camera pointer. We're going to make it public so that we can access it elsewhere. And we want a constant speed of 300. Again, we need a static void register methods so that we can register our functions. And then this time we are going to have process. And we are also going to have a ready function. We need a constructor and destructor. And then we want to update our motion from input. And that's all we want for our class right now. So in the C++ file, we'll include the header. We're going to be using namespace Godot. And then we want to define our register methods function. I always do them up at the top. We're going to register underscore process and point it to our underscore process function. And then we are going to register the ready function the same way. And then we want our constructor and our destructor. And we want our process function that takes in a float. We're going to update motion from input, and then we are going to move and slide. And that's pretty much all we're doing. And then we want our update motion from input. We're going to clear out our motion vector, and I should probably make sure that it's set to 0 in our constructor too. And then if we have input that is pressed or up, then we want to set our motion, reduce it by speed in the Y direction. And then we're going to copy paste that a few times for down, left, and right. So for UI down, left, and right. And then for down, we want to add Y speed. For left, we want to reduce X speed, and for right, we want to increase X speed. And then we want our ready function. We're going to need a string for camera because we're looking for this node. And then we are going to iterate through nodes, and we're going to grab a Godot array of getChildren so that we have all of our children, and we're going to just step through it and find the one that's called camera 2D. To get our child count, it's going to return an int64t. So we do owner get child count, and then we just make a for loop. Inside the for loop, we set our node to the child of index x, and if our camera 2D string is the same as the name of this node, then we know that it is the camera. So we will add our pointer to a camera and cast the node we're at to that camera pointer. And then we will set our player pointer to this, because this is our player. We are making that player pointer available to other classes. That's why it's there. And it builds, so that's pretty much it.